So this of all places comes from the Evening Standard. And, well, it's what we've already been talking about. Brexit was promised as a quick fix to fix all of Britain's ills. And, you know, this coming from the Standard shows that there really is a shift happening. So, promising a quick fix on Brexit has always been a monstrous con. The most ruthless populists thrive on public boredom, impatience, and the yearning for instant gratification. Boris Johnson has bet the farm on one thing, and one thing alone: boredom. When James Cleverly, the Conservative Party chairman, admitted he was quite bored of Brexit, he clearly spoke for the party members who can't wait to be shot of the whole process, as sundering from the European Union that they believed, because the Vote Leave campaign told them, would be a quick divorce, and has turned out to be a frustratingly proactive and fiddly diplomatic nightmare. And if the opinion polls are to be believed, Cleverly also spoke for perpetually perhaps a majority of voters who are exasperated beyond measure by the Chinese water torture of headlines about this or that development in the talks with the EU. They were also assured in the 2016 that the deal with Brussels would be swift and amicable. They have also been told again and again that once the UK has formally departed, its government would move on to what Johnson calls its domestic agenda. This is an astonishing duplicity. The day of the exit will only mark the beginning of a decade or more of complex different disentanglement. To undo the institutional, commercial and legal relationship of 40 years standing was always in truth going to be a long haul. But the message of the Tories gathering in Manchester has been quite otherwise. Get Brexit done. This is politics sold as fast-acting headache cures. I am transported back a decade and a half to a small gathering of journalists in London with Boris Johnson, a notoriously hawkish undersecretary at the State Department under President George W. Bush, and latterly Donald Trump's short-lived national security advisor. Repeatedly asked about the fall of Saddam Hussein and the civil war that followed, Bolton frowned and declared, "I'm bored with Iraq." It was a vile thing to say, as the bloody conflict as the conflict mounted. Abu Zawahiri paused the murderous work of Al-Qaeda's Iraqi franchise, and the Allies struggled to deliver on the order that they had promised that would follow liberation. But I remember thinking with a sense of revulsion that Bolton was not only expressing a personal opinion, he was tapping into something new and disturbing in culture. In 2006, the historian Nally Ferguson wrote brilliantly of the American attention to deficit. Since then, the phenomenon has grown prodigiously and is scarcely confined to the US. Thanks to the digital revolution, our attention has become the most precious commodity in the world because there is so little of it. We live in a state where tech analysts called continuous partial attention, continuously alert but distracted, never fully absorbed by anything, pumped up by a full stress hormone called cortisol. We've grown used to it. The insistent upon, immediately delivered, and promise of Deliveroo, Uber, and Amazon Prime now in a gratuitous category error. We increasingly expect public policy to be implemented with the speed of a such touchscreen app. Indeed, this cultural development is the greatest ally of today's most ruthless populists. They thrive on public boredom, impatience, and the yearning for instant gratification. They depend upon increasingly prevalent suspicion that things don't happen only because the elites are stopping them from happening. As a slogan, "Get Brexit Done," it perfectly captures the blinding principle of the Johnson regime, namely that the public has been cheated out of a swift departure of the EU by the stodgy coalition of MPs, bureaucrats, judges, and anyone else who fits the blame game. Let's be honest though, when did you last hear anyone make a serious effort to defend Brexit as a desirable outcome? In of itself, on its merits, its champions now deploy only two arguments with any conviction. The first is that the will of the people must be implemented. The second is that the delay is an intrinsic affront to the public, a betrayal of democracy, Hence, Johnson is defining objective is not to enhance the common good, though. Of course, he claims he is going to do that, but to make a deadline, he'd rather be dead in a ditch and seek another Article 50 extension. The UK will leave on the 31st of October, no if, no buts. But what if he fails to reach an agreement with Brussels at the October 17th to 18th EU summit? It's prevented by a Ben Act, and he's prevented by the Ben Act from leaving without a deal. Back comes the mantra. On October 31st, we are out. Resistance is useless. It is a monstrous con. If we do leave without a deal, the task ahead will become much harder and drawn out, as John Powell, Tony Blair's former chief of staff, pointed out on last night's Newsnight. We'll no longer be negotiating under Article 50. We'll be negotiating as a foreign country. However far the campaigning warriors of Vote Leave have fallen, from the battle cry of take back control to let's just get on with the whole thing over and done with, sold as bravado. Witness the staggering performances of Dominic Cummings, the PM's chief advisor, in fact makes a pitiful descent from a promise of national greatness to a wheeling infinite complaint. Are we there yet? For the rest of us, the challenge is not to fall for it, not to fall for the seduction of a quick fix. There is no quick fix at all, but to accept wearily, but without clarity, that the great national dilemma for which this particular political crisis is but a single chapter needs years, not days, to resolve. That will be hard to accept. And it's true. I've said this so often on this channel that even if we do leave, and we do leave with the withdrawal agreement, this is but the beginning of the beginning. If you think you are tired of Brexit now, this will drag on for years, even a decade or more. And we are going to come back to the point of you are going to have people are going to start realizing, because remember, at the moment we are still in the European Union. So when we are, if we do leave, which to be honest at this point I don't think it's going to happen. It's not going to happen. It doesn't matter what happens. All the MPs know that a no deal is completely impossible. They don't want it. So they are not going to leave without a deal. And then, when other sane heads start to realise that, hang on a second, isn't remaining in the EU a better prospect, an option for us than leaving at all? That's what's going to happen. Now, you may be bored now, but when physical stuff starts to happen to people, that's when another change will happen. Because already, I guarantee you, as we've, again, laid out this case before on this channel, a lot of people who voted to leave voted because they wanted to stay in the single market, in the customs union. That was Vote Leave's entire proposition, that we would not be leaving the single market. After all, only a fool would leave the single market, said Daniel Hannan, who now wants to leave with no deal and leave the single market. So there's one fool. And that was not discussed. They conned a load of people at that referendum in thinking that we were going to leave the European Union politically but stay in the single market and customs union, because they thought, well, if we stay in those two things, pretty much nothing changes. But now that it's very clear that's not what their aim was, and their aim was to just go wide as possible to attract as many people as they could, a lot of people are now going to go, next time the referendum comes around, goes, yeah, they lied to us, so we're going to vote to either go back in or just to remain. That's what's going to happen. And it should be very clear by this point that EU scepticism in this country is dead. As was pointed out here, there are arguments about, oh, it's the will of the people. Well, I'm sorry, but democracy is not set in stone. You cannot just say that a vote 3 years ago is now the completely democratic will and, claim to psychically know the will of the people in the UK. You don't. This is why we should absolutely have another referendum, because I guarantee you the results will be different.